Welcome to Bound by Books, a podcast of 5 authors across the genres talking about the one thing that we are all bound by, books. My name is Sherri Hayes. I write steamy contemporary romance and BDSM romance, and I am joined by my fellow co-host, Marianne Morea today.
Hi, everybody.
Marianne, why don't you tell everybody what you write and a little bit about your books?
I write paranormal everything, spicy. It's paranormal fantasy, vampires, werewolves, witches, fae. I write everything from, if you had to give it a flame, I write everything from 1 flame straight up to 4 flames. I won't go over 5 flames because that's Sherri, but 4 flames, adult as well as older YA. So yeah, paranormal, it straddles the line between genres of I would say paranormal romance, urban fantasy, and fantasy fiction. So that's me.
I think I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, if you took everything that all 5 of us that host this podcast write, is there any subgenre of romance that we don't write?
Steampunk.
There we go.
Steampunk.
I
can't wrap my head around it. If anybody would write steampunk, I think it would probably be Danielle Bannister. Or Tina Moss. Yeah, those
that
two.
Is exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking Danielle, because you want to talk about straddling the genres. She straddles genres.
Yeah.
I mean, she has got everything from sweet YA all the way up to, well, she's not quite as steamy as I am in that things, but she gets a little heated.
Yeah.
A little heated.
Yep.
So, and I think she's even got some paranormal stuff in there. She's got a psychological one in there. I mean, she's all over the place.
Yeah. In a good way. In a good way.
In a good way. Yes. Well, today, Marianne and I thought we would talk about heroes. I mean, let's be honest. Heroes are the reason that most romance readers pick up a romance.
Yeah, I don't know about for you, but for me, when it comes to heroes, my heroes are not Boy Scouts. They're not all good. They're just, it's like that phrase from one of my favorite, I think it was Little Women. Yes, the original Little Woman, well, not the original, but the one with Winona Ryder that most people know, where she says, you wouldn't want her, the mother says, well, you wouldn't want a bad man. And she says, well, no, of course not. I want a good man, but I wouldn't mind if he he could be bad, but chose not to be. So that's kind of like my mindset is that they have the potential for violence. They have the potential to be, to go to the dark side, so to speak. They have wine and cookies over there, so who wouldn't want to go? But they don't, and they don't because there is a moral compass inside them, and a lot of times it's because they've had, especially with my vampires, it's because they've had bad happen to them. So even though that they do have a propensity to darkness, they make the choice to look for redemption and absolution, and to err on the side of being a better type of a human, even though they're no longer human. So what about you, Cher?
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of right that line a little bit with the almost the anti-hero, but yet like just getting glimpses of that anti-hero, but yet you're still fall on that line of the hero, the good, that they're good in their soul. Mm-hmm. My tagline for my books is sexy stories, real heroes. So my heroes, I tend to like ones that are relatable, but they still have that commanding quality that is very much, but it's very realistic, where you could see them in everyday life, but yet they're kind of the ideal, in my head, things. My mom actually said that I write stories that they're the way you always hope a man will be, but isn't always.
Well, I have elements of that too. I mean, it's the way that they relate to the love interest in their life, the way that they communicate, even if it's something that they have to be taught, or even if my hero and my heroine are at loggerheads where they're snarking at each other left and right, that type of a thing. His inner monologues are always about treating her the way that she deserves to be treated.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and not there's never a question about that in my stories, and when I say they can be bad, I'm talking like if somebody is threatening theirs, me and
Mhm.
mine type of attitude, they will go freaking ape shit.
Yeah.
And that's when the predator comes out. That's when the animal comes out. That's when their base natures are tweaked. And
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I give my readers that. I mean, they have seen the beast, and and that, so that there's always two sides to my heroes, always.
Yeah, I love the heroes that are literally willing to do whatever it takes for the people that they love.
Yep.
And in romance, that is typically the love interest,
Mm-hmm.
but it can, depending on the story, it can be a number of things. It can be their family, it can be
Mm-hmm.
their children. I mean,
Yes.
it's going above and beyond and putting to the point where they are willing to put their lives on the line to protect or defend the person that they love or the people that they love.
Exactly.
That just
Exactly.
that just me. I asked a few years ago on my Facebook page, I asked my readers which was more important to them in a romantic hero, loyalty or honesty. And it was really interesting to see their answers because a lot of them were like, well, both. It has to be both. And but some of them were very much, like, oh no, honesty is more important. Some of honesty, were more loyalty is more important. I think for me, in a romantic hero, loyalty is the more important factor. I mean,
Absolutely.
honesty is great, but sometimes, you know, I think honesty with the heroine is really really important, and maybe that's where the distinction, because I can't stand a hero that will lie to his lady. I just can't stand that. But
Even little
it
white lies for her own benefit, because he's got to do something
mm,
that she may not want him to do, or he doesn't want her
uh,
to know something because it's going to hurt her badly. And then at the end of the story, he fesses up and says, "But you have to understand, this is why I had to do why I couldn't tell you." Not out and out,
mm,
not out and out lies. Like like
I
he's got a little side piece going along. That's not the kind of lies I think I'm talking about. I'm talking about lies of omission for her own greater good, because something has to get done that will either put her in danger or jeopardy. That's see, I have that in my books too. They're just like a little bit like,
I'm trying to think through that and the possibilities, and I'm still erring on the side of no.
okay, okay.
uh I just I would much rather have the hero be honest with the hero. I mean, yeah, I would. I mean, I'm sure maybe there are exceptions to that rule. However, I would say 99.9% of the time, I am wanting the hero to be honest with the heroine, no matter what. So
I have
yeah,
I think in my world, because it is paranormal, I have a lot of situations where like my shifters, they share like a common mind path, and my vampires, some of them can read minds and read thoughts, um, which is not uncommon in the mythology. But so there's always more reason for my heroes to keep things from the heroine when it puts them in danger, and vice versa because of it. I
which
mean,
again, I can see there are certain situations, maybe it still irritates me. I mean, it's not something that will make me completely like be like, oh, I'm never, this hero is just it for me. I'm not having it. You're just a horrible person. How dare you lie to your lady or anything like that. I I can get over it if it's for really good reasons or something like that. It's just not something I particularly prefer. I prefer the honesty as well, but loyalty obviously. And I guess it depends on the level of danger. If you really tell me that you convinced me that telling this person is going to put them in more danger, then I'm more willing to buy into what you're saying. If it's not going to put them in more danger, it's just going to hurt their feelings.
No,
I
I
don't
don't. I'm
know.
not
I'm not
talking
really
about
buying that.
that. I'm not talking about. I mean, then
Okay.
it's not the do these jeans make my ass look fat? Type of a thing. It's not.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of fib I'm talking about. Not that one of my heroes would ever tell any of my curvy girls that they look fat, because that's just a no. Because I'm a curvy girl, and curvy girls got to represent, babe. Got to represent. So
Oh man, yeah. Well, as we're talking about this, it actually one of my favorite romantic heroes actually kind of does what you're talking about. It I don't know if you've ever read the story The Bronze Horseman.
I have not. Tell me, tell me.
Okay. Okay, so it's a historical romantic fiction. It takes place in Russia during the Nazi occupation of World War II.
That's
So basically, in the siege that they put on, I think it was Leningrad, so anyway, it takes place there, but you have these two people who meet, and they're in communist Russia, first of all, and then their town is being placed under siege, where there's already limited resources, there's even more limited resources, and people are sneaking food and this and that and the other. And he ends up essentially, at several points in the story, but towards the end especially, pretty much sacrificing himself to save her. And he lies to her because he knows, he tells the truth that she follow him, she will come with him, and he knows that he's going to get taken. So basically he makes it so that she has to do something, she has to go and he has to stay. It's yeah, so in that particular thing, but he knew that if she stayed, that she would get taken too, and he wanted to save her. So yeah, it was that part was, again though, that was very much an immediate, instantaneous, her life is in danger right now if I tell her the truth, versus again the, oh well, I did this thing. Like, that's what comes to mind when I first think about, honesty with heroes. It's not that immediate thing when somebody asks me that. It's the, oh well, I did something, 6 months ago, and or 5 years ago or whatever, and I'm not going to tell them because it might hurt their feelings. That that doesn't go for me.
Well, I mean, they're not just going to blurt it out like they're reading out like they're reading off a menu. Okay, I did X, Y, and Z 5 years ago, when there's no context. But if it comes up, yeah, you have to be honest. I agree. You know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't. When I first met my husband, I didn't open up a diary and say, okay, here are the litany of my sins from the past, just so you know. It was just if things came up, that's
Right.
when it got discussed. It wasn't like I had to give him a dossier, a dossier beforehand.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Oh, yeah, of course, of course. So now when you're writing your heroes, do your heroes, because one of the things I notice a lot in romance is heroes being commitment phobic. And my heroes totally aren't. My heroes are not commitment phobic at all.
mine are not either.
They are not. And that just, I don't know what it is, but it does seem to be a very big trope when it comes to heroes in romance. And there's a lot of them. I think it's less now than what it used to be. It used to be very much a the women kind of chasing after the man.
Yeah, no.
and it
I don't do that in real life. I'm not going to
yeah.
create a heroine who does that. Sorry, no. I think it's a lot in the billionaire type of a thing, billionaire romance. I only have one of those, which was co-written with somebody, and it was called The Alpha's Chase. But in that book, the twist was that she was the billionaire. So, and it was like a marriage of convenience type of a trope where she needed to get married, or her step brother was going to challenge the will, or some kind of pap like that. But
Interesting. Yeah, I
yeah.
only have my Finding Anna series is the only uh stories that have a billionaire in them, and I don't really ever come out and say he's a billionaire. I just imply that he's very, very wealthy and his family is very wealthy. But I actually got some flack from a few reviewers because I the first at the one of the opening scenes in Slave, he he goes to the freezer and pulls out some frozen pizzas for her when he first brings her home, and I had some readers that were just like, he's a billionaire, he wouldn't eat frozen pizza.
Why not?
That's what I was like, why not? I mean, I guess yeah, he could order that, but it's like, why wouldn't, just because you're wealthy doesn't necessarily mean that you're never going to have convenience food. Because
President Clinton they used to joke that he never passed a McDonald's he didn't like. So I mean, come on,
yeah,
seriously, come on.
I'm like, I didn't really understand that, but yeah.
Anyway, but I mean, for me, I think I see. I'm a huge lover of. I'm a huge Jane Austen fan. Huge. It's my go-to when I'm feeling when I need just a kind of a curl up on the couch with a bowl of popcorn and turn off the world type of a day. And I love Pride and Prejudice, and I love Sense and Sensibility. And everybody's like, oh, Mr. Darcy, from that. He was kind of an arrogant dick, and then he shows that he's really not. He just is he hides his true nature. I don't know why. And I have a little bit of sometimes I have problems with that, because Elizabeth Bennet doesn't want anything to do with him until she sees his estate. And then all of a sudden she's like, Mr. Darcy, it's like, all right, yeah, gold digger. but I still love the movie because I do. And I love the book. But I have to say, for me, with a hero, the first one that I would put is Colonel Brandon from Sense and Sensibility. He's an older gentleman. He's not older, like he's not like 70 or 60. He's probably 35. So he's seasoned in the time frame of he's sowed his wild oats. He's done his military service. He's wealthy, and he's looking to settle down. And he sets his cap for Marianne Dashwood, who's this very young, idealistic in everything, especially in romance. I mean, she just wants to burn in romance, and that type of a thing. And she doesn't want anything to do with him because she's in love. She wants the dashing man on a big black horse, and who turns out to be a real dickwad, in the show. He turns in the book as well. And then when the chips are down and she is ill and she needs somebody who is steady and strong and honest and willing to go that extra mile, like we said, put his life on the line, except it's not his life on the line, but he is going to ride through the night because she's so ill that she may die, to bring her mother back to her, to give her a little bit of solace and comfort. Right. That's the kind of man we all want. We all want somebody who will put themselves to that end, that will ride through fire because we need something, because something is that important to us. And he shows his true colors, and as being a true man, a real man, not somebody who's just this player. He's a real man. And she ends up with him in the end, so because she finally wakes up from this fantasy dream that she's had about what men are supposed to be like, the ones that were portrayed in earlier literature. Tristan and
Right.
Isolde, and tragic ends, Romeo and Juliet type of a thing, where it doesn't have to be a tragic end. It has to be, somebody has
Right.
to actually be an adult in the room, that type of a thing. So
Right. Yeah. And so in some of those that you mentioned, like they do tend to be more fanciful, like
yeah,
over the top heroes, where
yeah,
again, my heroes tend to be a lot more realistic, and that tends to be a lot more what I'm like. I want those more mature, not afraid of commitment, willing to lay it all down on the line for their heroine, which brings us to another very epic uh, fictional hero, Jamie Fraser from Outlander.
I will be still my heart, be still my heart. And I know you and I are in total agreement with this one. Total
Yes.
agreement in this one.
Yes. There is just something about Jamie Fraser that just,
He's that bad boy who chooses to be good. He is.
mm,
He's that bad boy who chooses to be good. He breaks the rules when he has to break the rules, you know. Um, and
yeah,
he'll do anything to go to the ends of the earth barefoot if he, for Claire, if he has to,
yeah,
take on the entire British army if he has to, will take a lash if he has to, he's
yeah,
that type of a man. But I have to say, I mean, we were talking earlier that the character arc at some points in the later books, he gets a little annoying. I have to say, at least in my opinion, he does. And besides Jamie, I have to say, on a quieter type of hero in that same series is Roger Mack. I he has his moments where he's being a jerk, like when he walks out on Brianna, when he follows her back, through the sands of time, and then actually finds her in the past,
and then he walks
and
away.
then he
It's like,
walks away, which
really?
is like, okay, but being sold to the Mohegans, I mean, Mohegans
The
at that
Mohawk.
point, Mohawk rather, you know that kind of taught him a lesson, but is grappling with a lot, and he chooses to stay in the past because of her. I mean,
Yeah.
he has a lot that happens to him in the past because he's at the mercy of somebody who tells lies about who he is, when and he gets hung after that skirmish, that battle, and then he for some reason survives that, and loses his voice. But it's a lot, there's a lot that happens in there, so I have to say he gets props for respect on my from me as a hero. He does in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
respect.
there are a lot of
Quiet
really,
hero.
really good heroes. I will say that Diana Gabaldon does write really, really, really good heroes in general. One of my favorite characters in that story is actually Lord John.
Oh
I
yeah,
love
I love Lord John. Did
I
you
love Lord John.
have you read the Lord John series?
I have not.
It's
I
really good.
it,
It's really good.
it's always been, it's been on my TBR list for a really long time. I just, again, I don't read a whole lot of historical fiction, romance, anything. It's very, very sparse and few and far between. So it's just not kind of my go-to, but I'm like, man, I really need to actually, I think I actually have the first couple of them. I just haven't actually picked them up and read them. But I don't know. He just, again, he has that same, even though he's not the hero of the books, he has his moments where he just still has those same characteristics of a really awesome like hero in my book, because he will do anything for the people that he loves, and that is
Jamie.
Jamie, Willie. I mean,
Yeah.
he will do anything for those two people. I mean, that those two people in his life, he will do anything for, because they are who he loves and who he's kind of committed himself to.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's so admirable. I mean, in a hero, and it's
Like
so appealing.
offering to marry Brianna.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is one of the, I would say, one of the most heartfelt scenes, where she is just like, she's basically trying to blackmail him into marrying her. And then once he's like totally offended, and then all of a sudden it's like she explains why, and he's just like, okay, well, I'm gonna step up. Whether we'll at least put things off so that because
Give
I
you a
can
chance.
obviously step back. Yeah, so take the pressure off. So yeah, it's just I love that. I do. I love that in a hero where it's just put it all on the line. That's the thing.
But
So
even in a situation, whether it's our characters or the characters that we read in the fiction that we love, that are, like, for me, like I said, you have moments where they're just annoying, that the good in them, and I don't mean Boy Scout good, I mean the actual adult male in them that has that moral compass, that is so entrenched in doing what is right for the people that they love, is it far outweighs the tiny little niggling moments where they're just like, just like, okay, no, that's annoying, stop, and then they do stop. And I
yeah,
love the fact that in the fiction that we love to read, in the fiction that we write for both of us, then our heroines are strong enough that when our heroes are having that annoying moment, that our heroines step up and basically say exactly what I just said. No, 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 stop, and they stop. That they actually listen to the women in their lives. They give them. They may argue and they may stomp away, but their inner monologues are always where they realize that the woman was right and
yeah,
they were
yeah.
being jerks. So
Yeah, the one book that the one story that I wrote, I'm trying to think if I have any more, but there's one where for sure, and I'm thinking of it because it's part of my Boys in Blue box set that's coming out in September. Is Crossing the Line, where Paul is actually the one who is not interested in a relationship. He's a widower, a single dad. He blames himself for his wife dying, and even though it's not his fault, but that was kind of his moment of being stupid, is that he's convinced himself that he is responsible for his wife's death when she was actually hit by a drunk driver. I mean, he wasn't even in the car. It was just that they had had a fight, and she stormed off, and ended up, that was the last time they ever spoke to each other. So he felt like he had a lot of guilt. And there's a scene in the book where Megan just basically tells him to get over it. And it's not his fault to get over it. So yeah, I mean, that time where it's just being stupid and moving past it. But again, for me, it's all about, it's very contextual. It has to make sense in the context. And that to me is where it comes down to, a good author can write a believable scenario and a believable scene to have everything play out naturally, versus it being very broken up and just kind of contrite and put out there, and like, hey, I'm gonna delve into this trope and write this, versus a very well thought out, you know easy flow, good pacing plot line. So, but you have to have your solid characters, like you're talking about. You have to have those characters that are mature. I don't think that's one of the reasons why I do not particularly like new adult romance, because the characters just tend to be a little too immature for my
well,
taste.
they're still in the larval stage.
Yes.
They haven't fully formed yet as adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a time, and there's a place for them, because there are plenty of people who
Mhm.
sometimes, whether they're in their late teens, early 20s, and are in the throes of that larval stage, or there are some adults who are just never got
Never
out of
grow
it.
up.
Yeah,
Never grow up.
the Peter Pans and Wendy's, but
Yeah.
like in Twice Cursed, in my book Twice Cursed, which is the first main book in the Cursed by Blood series. My main character, Lily, is not being accepted by Sean's pack, because he's a shifter It's a shifter urban fantasy. And it's not, doesn't have anything to do with the fact that, that she's saved their pack from this virus. Because of the, the antigens are, the antibodies are in her blood, and they've just turned on her because of pack politics, and there's a lot of machinations going on behind the scenes. So she's, and she loves Sean, who is the alpha of the brethren, and he loves her, and they want to be together. But she realizes that I need to go back to New York because this happens up in Maine, and I need to go back to New York. And he doesn't want to let her go, but he knows that she has to. And he doesn't want to let her go by herself. So he ends up sending one of his hunters with her, this guy named this guy named Jack. And she gets all upset. She's like, I don't need a babysitter. I know how to use a gun. And he's basically like, I'm not sending him as a babysitter. You carry my mark, which means that if I'm not there, every shifter under the sun is gonna be attracted to you, and vice versa. And she's like, did you turn me into some lunar driven nymphomaniac? And he's like, no. But he lets her go because that's what adult men do, is they're not going to try and keep you when you feel like you need to be there. And she explains to him, you have to deal with what you have to deal with here to try and find out what impolitic cruelties are going on behind the scenes, and what kind of machinations, like I said before, you have to get to the root of it. And my being here is only going to be a distraction. And I think that that's part of why they're giving me such a hard time, is to distract you from really what's going on. So I'm going to go back to New York. I'm going to do what I need to do. And then we'll figure things out as we go. And she does. And it turns out what's happening, at the compound of Wares in Maine has now bled into what's going on. There's things happening in New York, and it's all interconnected. And at one point she says, you have to come to New York. And he does what he has to do, not because he's going to New York to be with her. That's just a perk. He's going to New York because he has to liaise with the vampires, and because now vampires and Weirs are, in my mythology, are enemies. And they have to form this tentative truce to figure out what the hell is happening that's affecting both of their supernatural subcultures. So, and that's, she doesn't want to leave, but at the same time, she knows she has to, and Sean doesn't want to let her leave. But he knows it's for the best at this point in time. And I've had readers contact me, were like, oh my God, you're sending her with Jack, and Jack is, what did you, and then she has to hook up with a detective by the name of Ryan, because she's a New York City profiler. That was her job. That's why she says, I know how to handle a gun. She's a profiler. And so they put, the bloodbaths that are happening in New York City, that are at the hands of the vampires, the New York City Police Department and the Commissioner of Police, they have no friggin' clue. So not only is she a profiler, but she's a psychic. And so they're at the ends of their rope. So they bring in a psychic. I mean, no police department is going to work with a psychic unless they're at the end of their rope. It's not part of their culture. So she is paired up with a homicide detective, and there's sparks flying between them because he's half shifter and he doesn't realize it. And my readers are like, you had her leave Sean, and now she's having this, now there's all this sexual tension between her and this cop. We don't like that. This wasn't supposed to be a love triangle, but it's not. It's all part of what is happening and why. It leads to the end, and that's why I had to have Sean come to New York, so that they know that it's not a love triangle. So, yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
so that kind of brings us a little bit to the bad boy trope.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your thoughts on that? I'm assuming that you're not a big fan of that, maybe walking the line of it, but I mean, we've kind of been talking about, both of us are very much in the we like the mature men, I guess you would say, as a romantic hero. So, I mean, I know personally, I'm not a huge bad boy fan. Again, I'm fine if they kind of walk that line a little bit, of where they'll do anything where they're willing to cross what's traditionally considered acceptable, if it is for the protection of their of the people that they love. but in general, like I'm not I just like I don't really
I'm not a
typically get
fan.
into the bad boy type situation.
Not a fan at
I
all.
know it's a huge trope.
I know it is, but I'm not a fan at all. I won't read a bully romance. I just I know there are
Oh,
people I know there are people who love them,
I,
and I'm not going to trash them because, to each his own. If that's what does it
yeah,
for you, then that's great. For me personally, I can't because I am too much of an alpha female to ever have to ever put up with a bully who's just a bully for a bully's sake. I mean, my attitude is you're a bully because deep inside is a cowardly little boy who is just cowering at the idea of commitment, cowering at the idea of having to take on the responsibilities and be a real man. So therefore, it's not in my wheelhouse or in my inclination to want to have to take that cowering little boy out from deep inside you and train them how to be a man. So that's just not my deal. Okay. I'm too much of an alpha female to have to deal with that sniveling little child inside the bully, living inside the bully.
yeah, that is one of the romance tropes that's really like came to prominence in the last couple of years. I just can't wrap my head around. I might get the whole enemies to lovers thing to a certain extent,
But that's different. Enemies to
but
lovers
yeah,
doesn't
but
necessarily mean a bully,
right, exactly. I mean, you could be enemies because your family has,
Yeah.
has.
Hatfields and the McCoys. Yeah, that type
Right,
of thing.
exactly. But the bully romance thing, I just don't. You're right. I just don't get it. I
And
don't
like I don't
understand how you could just have somebody who treated you like crap, tortured you essentially, harassed you, tortured you, whatever, in school or college or what have you, and then all of a sudden you fall in love with them. I don't understand that. I really
well,
don't. So, listeners, if you can explain that to me, if you love bully romance and you can explain the appeal to me, I would love to hear it because I I
I
just don't get it.
I think it's the
I
fantasy
don't.
of um that they will fall so head over heels in love with you that they won't bully anymore. That you will be a ministering angel who will change
The
them. The
fixer
fixer.
complex. Yeah, maybe.
And
Which
I'm sorry,
you
I don't
know,
have time for that. So I don't have
yeah.
time for that. I got to fix me. I'm not going to worry about fixing anybody else. So
Which has been a trope though for years. I mean, for a long time in romance. That
well,
whole
think
the
about Sherri, think about a woman's psyche and where we came from in the past. All right. Think about it just as short ago as, 70 years ago in the 1950s. All right, where women were housewives and mothers. They didn't really have careers outside of the home, even into the 60s, when we had all the civil rights movements, and it was the beginning of the women's movement that came into the 70s. My mother-in-law, she got married in 1967. She had my husband in 69, and she had my brother-in-law in 72. She was not allowed to continue working. She was a hairdresser, not allowed to continue working once her pregnancy was when she started to show. Things have changed tremendously, but it wasn't that far in the past that women were basically second class citizens. So the idea of having to have this fixer attitude comes from, I think, a lot of that, the way that women were trained, that we were the nurturers, they were the ones who fixed the problems in the home, we fixed our husbands, and so I think that carries over. I mean, that's just my 2 cents of psychobabble for the day. So, but that's how I think that comes with the territory, with these kinds of romances. Same thing with dubious consent. That that's another one that where it's kind of it straddles the line, where dubious consent is something that most people in their lifetime, in their reality of life, would never allow, but they will read it because it's fantasy. And same thing with some of this ones that border on abuse. They'll read it because it's fantasy. but in their own personal reality, they would never accept it in their real life. So I don't know, maybe it has to do with giving up control.
Probably.
Maybe that's the other thing, is because
BDSM fiction is a huge thing, but again, there's the dubious consent side, which is a completely kind of separate thing, versus the BDSM side, which is the giving up control but consensually. So
right.
It's an interesting topic, one that we actually probably don't have time to give into.
No.
We are.
But if I had to spin the wheel of fictional boyfriends to land on, if you peppered them with all the different types of them, whether there was bully romance or dubious consent or any of the other ones under the umbrella of romance, my wheel would stop on hero every single time, and the kind of hero that you and I have discussed. And for me, the ones that are good but had the potential to be bad but chose not to. That's me. That's what I love.
Yeah. Like I said, I think as far as heroes go, I think we do have kind of very similar tastes in heroes, as far as the more mature, ultra loyal hero that is willing to do anything and not afraid of commitment, not a sleazy over the top bad boy. So we prefer, I think, our mature things, which I think is more of what we write. I mean, when I was reading your story Condemned, I mean, he was definitely not an immature boy. He was definitely, now granted, he was 900 years old, but he was also, personality wise, he was definitely. And even the thing is even when you gave us the historical scenes where it flashed back to when he was in his early 20s, he was still a very upstanding, man. He was not a boy.
Right.
He's going to do things and be, the best person that he could be. So I think that's a good place to end today.
Well, he was 900 years old. You have to qualify that. He's
a
vampire.
I know.
He's not Methuselah.
I know. Yeah,
He's a
that's
vampire.
true. Yeah, that's true. I didn't say vampire, but we did talk about the paranormal, so it was kind of implied. It was kind of implied there.
Yeah.
But
actually, I did have a reader who said to me, she left a DNF on Goodreads for the book, and that was because, he's 23 years old, and he acts like Ned Stark. Meaning, from Game of Thrones, the older, the Lord of the North, and who is the father of his whole clan, basically, and that he acts like Ned Stark instead of one of the young. He's only 23, and I was going to answer back, and I thought to myself, it's not worth it. It's not worth it, because you know what? Yeah, he's chronologically stopped aging at 23, but he's fucking 900 years old. He's gonna have character growth over that, and personality growth. He's gonna evolve over that.
Well, not just that,
years.
but 23-year-olds 900 years ago and 23-year-olds today are not the same thing.
Yeah, I know. So that's why I didn't get into it with her.
Most 23-year-olds 900 years ago were married, or at least, and probably had children at that point. Most 23-year-olds today, not so much.
No.
So, but anyway, we'll end it there. Thank you all for listening or watching, if you're watching on YouTube. And if you would like to find out more about me, Marianne, or any of our other hosts, or the podcast in general, you can visit our brand new website. It just launched last week.
Yay!
Yay! We're so excited. It is boundbybookspodcast.com. So very easy to remember, and you can check it out. We've got bios on there of all of the authors that are involved, links to our websites, our Facebook pages, our newsletters, so you can keep up on that. And you can also listen to the podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, Blog Talk Radio, and we are also now on Google and Apple Podcasts. So you can check us out pretty much on all the major podcast interviews. So hopefully you will join us next Monday at 12 noon Eastern time for the next episode of Bound by Books. Until then, bye.
Thank you all. Bye.